Well, good evening. It's great to see all of you here. How about those graduates? Well done, guys. Thank you very much. So it is my pleasure, as is our custom, to address you each year and to fill you in on what's happening on the college. And I'd like to do that at the college. I'd like to do that this evening fairly briefly, and then to leave some time for question and discussion. Anything you'd like to talk about, we certainly can. But I'll begin by talking about some highlights of the year, some things that we've accomplished, some things that we're working on, and then talk a little bit about some of the larger issues facing higher education in the United States and how we're thinking about what it means to Lafayette. So first of all, I'm pleased to say that overall, in many ways, this has been a very, very successful year for the college. We measure that in a variety of ways. What kind of accomplishments have our students had? What kind of placement have they had in terms of graduate opportunities? Where are they going off to next? What kinds of initiatives have we been able to move forward on this year? What kind of challenges have we been able to surmount and deal with? And on all of those fronts, I think we did exceptionally well this year. One of the things that we have been especially focused on the last few years has been giving our students opportunities genuinely to excel on any number of fronts. But one of the things we say about Lafayette that is true today and was true when you were here is our commitment to providing an exceptional individual experience for every student so they have the chance to be mentored, to work closely with faculty, and to accomplish things that are important to them. One measure of those kinds of efforts are the kind of achievements that they accomplish in their individual work. And we have had a lot of success this year with our students getting scholarships and fellowships, postgraduate fellowships. Let me ask you just a process question. Is this coming really loud? It's all right? Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't want it too loud if any of you would like to nap. I don't want to get in the way of that. We have had exceptional progress on this area. So we had 3 students who earned Fulbright scholarships this year and 2 who were also runners-up who almost won them, but 3 we did. We had a student win a Beinecke scholarship this year. This is an extraordinarily prestigious grant that's given to graduate, or in this case, a student, a rising senior, who is a student in history. Only 20 are given nationally among several hundred competing individual schools, and we had a student earn one. We had another student win a Goldwater scholarship. These are the most prestigious grants given to graduating students in the STEM disciplines: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And we now are one of the top schools in the country in Goldwater scholarships. Over the last 10 or 15 years, we are close to leading the nation. We had 3 students win grants from the Environmental Protection Agency, again, highly prestigious grants, and we had win one from the National Institute of Health. These are just a sampling of some of the more prestigious grants, but in point of fact, we're doing exceptionally well. We have very talented students who come here who want to do work individually with faculty, and this is one measure of those accomplishments. We have become, in the last few years, a genuine powerhouse in the area of a competition called the Fed Challenge, and I talked about this last year as well. Small team of students studying economics they create a team, and their job is to compete regionally and then nationally to develop monetary policy. So they have to take their classroom learning, apply it to real-world problems, think about what the Fed would do, develop their own policy, and then make a compelling case in front of judges, including representatives of the Fed. So they have to speak clearly, argue effectively, analyze deeply, and make a compelling argument. 2 years ago, we were national champions. This year, I'm sorry to say, we only came in second, which is to say, schools all over the spectrum participate in this: Harvard, Princeton, Rutgers, Northwestern. It is a highly competitive field, and we've done exceptionally well there. One reason is that our faculty focus very carefully on working with the students to help them be successful in this area, because they believe in the value of that kind of experience. If we step back a little bit and look at the year as a whole and not so much about individual students or teams, we've also had a variety of accomplishments. Although, as I said, not only accomplishments, we've had some challenges as well. This year, the Bloomberg News came up with what they would call a ranking or an evaluation of institutions evaluated on their basis of return on investment for the student. So what are the best schools in the country with regard to return on investment? And what they did was they took a look at the cost of attending the college, how much financial aid on the whole they provide, and what kind of opportunities the students have afterwards as measured by salary in various industries. And on that national competition, we were among the top 10 schools in the country there too. And that helps us to explain to people that the return on investment, tuition is high, there's no question, to attend Lafayette or Amherst or Princeton or any number of private institutions. But the return on that investment is what one should think about. What does this investment allow students to accomplish throughout their lives? And Bloomberg News helped us make that argument a little bit more effectively. We had this year the second, well, I would say about 18 months ago, we began a process to evaluate and understand the Greek system fairly deeply. 2 years ago, we had a series of challenges on our campus that led to the question, what's happening with the Greek system? Why are these issues happening on our campus? And instead of dealing with them incrementally, we decided to take a systematic look at both sororities and fraternities. And we impaneled a committee of trustees, administrators, faculty, staff, alumni, representatives of the Greek system, participants actively in the Greek system, as well as others who went through the college not having participated in the Greek system. When I first impaneled the committee, I told them it might take about 6 months to do this work, and it took them 18 months. They did the most comprehensive and substantive assessment of Greek life on a college campus probably anywhere in America in the last generation. It's a really extraordinary report. And their recommendations and analysis was presented to the board at our meeting about 2 weeks ago, the last meeting of the year. We had a very good and productive discussion at the board level about the findings in the report and the recommendations. The report outlined a series of issues related to their assessment of the way in which the Greek life functions on our campus. How do students perform academically before and after they join the Greek system? How do those performances compare to students who don't participate in the Greek system? What are the differences between consumption of alcohol by students who participate in the Greek system and those who don't? How about leadership opportunities on campus through student government and athletics? They looked at a whole spectrum of activities to understand how the Greek organizations contribute to those areas, and that was all part of their analysis. They made a series of recommendations. It's a very substantive report, and now the board has asked the administration to review the report carefully and provide a response to them in our October meeting. What of these recommendations do we think we can implement successfully? What would the cost be? What would the timetable be? What do we believe is feasible? So we're in the process of doing that, but I will say I'm very proud of the work that they did because this was an issue on our campus we needed to address, and we did it in a way that respects what our community is all about, which is substantive engagement in a challenge, using evidence and argument to adduce the right kinds of observations and then to discuss them in an open and transparent manner. And that's what this report does. So we'll have more to say about that as we are in the process of determining the feasibility of these recommendations. We had a very strong year on admissions this year. I will say, and I'm going to come back to this at the end of my remarks, that the world of higher education is changing very dramatically in the immediate wake of the economic downturn of 2008, but also, I think, more broadly than just related to the economic impact of that downturn. And one consequence of that has been an interruption in the traditional cycle of admissions. 2 years ago, we saw a diminution in applications to the college, a small number, but instead of them rising every year, they dropped a little bit. And then last year, we saw a recovery, a substantial recovery, and this year we were about level. And the issue is that, on the one hand, the economy has challenged many families to think that attending a place like Lafayette is affordable, in many cases because they don't really know what the economics are of going to a private institution, particularly if they have financial need. Many families simply don't understand how that works. So in any case, we saw a leveling of applications. Notwithstanding that, the quality of this class is one of the finest we've ever had in the history of the college. On every academic measure, the percentage of students in the top 10% of the class, in SAT scores, the numbers are up significantly. Last year, the percentage of students in the top 10% of their graduating high school class was about 57%. This year, it's 66%, which is a very significant increase. And again, SAT scores increased. All of those measures have improved dramatically. At the same time, we have seen improvement both in our admit rate and in our yield. These tell us that the marketplace is responding well to the kinds of things we're doing on our campus. We've worked very hard in the last 2 years to get the word out more effectively about what this college is about, why students should want to come here and what they'll get out of the experience after they graduate, or during the process, I should say. And I think that the performance this year has helped us to see that the message is getting heard. We're very encouraged about that. We've also had some dramatic success to report on the athletics front, although I'm sorry to say not so much on the field as academically. We did not have a great athletic year, but we had a great year of student athletes. We lead the nation. We're one of the top 10 schools fairly regularly, and this year again, in academic progress rate, which is the percentage of students, Division I athletes, who graduate on time and effectively. And that's something we're very proud of. The Patriot League, in the top 10 schools on that list, I think 3 of them are Patriot League schools. And that, again, speaks to the values of that league, what we're committed to, and we're pleased to report that we were in that company. We have also had a lot of success this year in engaging and advancing strategic initiatives that came out of the strategic plan that was approved by the board about 3 years ago, a little bit less, in 2007. And the strategic plan identified a series of major initiatives that were seen to be opportunities to substantially advance the college. One of those had to do with arts education. We had made significant investments, as many of you know, about 10 years ago in creating new facilities in fine arts for our students. And that's what the Williams Art Center at the bottom of the hill was all about. It provides studio space for sculptors and painting and drawing, all of those areas of the fine arts. And those programs have thrived in that new facility and with those new investments. This arts initiative was to identify ways to strengthen our commitment to the performing arts, primarily film and media, which is the most rapidly growing, vibrant art form in the world, and one in which we did not have substantial coverage or engagement, and our students are very interested in studying film. In theater, where we had a reasonably strong program, but not adequate facilities and not enough opportunity to support student interest because primarily of the limitations in facilities. So this initiative, the arts initiative, is underway at the bottom of the hill. I'm sure all of you noticed when you came off 22 that 3rd Street is looking a whole lot better than it has in the past. So, thank you. The project that's underway there is really exciting. The idea is, on the one hand, to take all of those buildings which we now have purchased over the last several years, which most of them are not dilapidated, but they're actually rather solid, strong buildings that can be repurposed. Those that are dilapidated have mostly been torn down, including the so-called hubcap warehouse, which has been now torn down and turned into a very pretty green area with flowers. But the buildings along 3rd Street have now all been acquired by the college. We used a grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to do the first phase of work, which is mostly the cosmetic work on the outside that you see. We have secured a major gift from the Williams family, the same people who brought us the Williams Arts Center and the Williams Center for the Arts on the top of the hill, to turn that precinct on the bottom of the hill into the Williams Arts Campus. And all of those buildings will be renovated and repurposed to the performing arts. We will have studio space for production and screening of film. There will be a black box theater for the theater program, as well as space for rehearsals and the creation of props and costumes. There will be faculty offices down there, where that will be where the faculty work. We'll have a handful of faculty who are located there all the time. We'll have courses taught down there, programs down there, and indeed the spot is also, this was a space that we turned into a student restaurant social space a few years ago, can also be opened up as a restaurant. So the idea is every weekend there'll be activities down there that engage our students in productive interaction with the arts. But also many of these activities will be open to the public. So it also helps us to support Easton's initiative to be an arts community, which is something they're doing effectively, and we're helping them. And then finally, of course, it also opens up our gateway to the campus in a much more attractive and exciting way. So when the work is done, the outside of the buildings won't only look nice, but the insides will be humming with activity, and there will be people down there. So we're very excited about that, and that funding is in place, and we're on our way. We also had the opportunity to announce a very exciting initiative this year in global education. One of the main strategic objectives was to enhance our profile and our commitment to globalism. And we did that through the creation of the Oxley Center for Global Education. The idea is this building, which has been funded by Walter and Krista Oxley with a major gift, will allow us to provide space for interdisciplinary programs in global studies, faculty offices from around the campus in different disciplines in order to bring them together, give them a chance to talk with each other, to create new programs, and to engage students in a new way. So there'll be classroom space and social gathering space and all kinds of programming space in this new academic building. And we think that will help us to create real synergies with what already exists in global education and to build new programs. The construction on that project will begin this year, and there too, as I said, the funding is in place. Partnering with the Oxley Center for Global Education will be a residence hall called Grossman House, which is going to be used. It's the old Phi Gamma Delta House on 611 High Street. It's being converted into a residence hall for students who are interested in global education, whatever they're majoring in. They don't have to be international students. They don't have to be majoring in this, but they have to be interested in this. And the idea is it will be an exciting, intellectually rich space where students can live and learn together, and there will be facilities there to host visitors. So imagine they'll have dinner every month with a visiting ambassador or a faculty member or something like that. So the global initiative is underway, and it's very exciting. At the beginning of our plan, we announced a goal to increase the size of our faculty by 20% without measurably increasing the size of our undergraduate population. The initiative was intended to enhance that most distinctive aspect of the Lafayette experience, close student-faculty interaction and mentoring. And I'm pleased to say that notwithstanding the downturn in the economy and all of these challenges, we're halfway there. We have added 18 new faculty in the last couple of years. 10 of them are new endowed professorships, which represents a $20 million commitment from our donors to make that happen and get it done. So we're very excited that that work is underway and it has gone well. Another area of focus in the strategic plan was to change our curriculum. The Common Course of Study, which is the common educational experience that all students have in addition to whatever else they study. Changing a curriculum at a faculty is extraordinarily difficult to do because we have 205 faculty who all know exactly what the right answer is, and it ain't the same one as the other 204. And they have to figure that out. It took us about 2.5 years to work on this, and they ratified a new Common Course of Study near the last meeting of the year, and it's an exceptional contribution to a new way of thinking about what students should be learning. It was done in a collaborative and intellectually exciting way, and that work is done. That curriculum will be implemented next year. It is the first time we've done this in 17 years. As I say, it doesn't happen often. So that is underway. We made a commitment to transform the quad from a very beautiful space with a lot of cars to a more beautiful space with no cars. And the funding for that project has also, for the most part, been secured. The construction on that project might begin this summer. The resources are there, and we're ready to go. But we need the okay from various zoning folks who aren't in the same level, don't have the same level of urgency that we have. But we're working with them. In any event, the project will be done in 2 phases. This summer, ideally, and then next summer it will be completed. But at that time, Pardee Drive will be a walkway with bricks and benches and lights and landscaping instead of automobiles. Although people can drive on it if they have to, and fire trucks can drive on it if they have to, it will be available for those purposes. And Quad Drive, the other roadway that goes around the quad, will also be turned into a walkway with much the same kind of aesthetic contribution. So the quad will become a much more attractive, quiet, reflective, recreational space than it is now. Because one of the things I have to say I noticed when I arrived on this campus is, we all know it's a beautiful quad, but architecturally it's also extraordinarily distinguished. It's a virtual thesaurus of interesting architecture on the quad. And by doing this, we'll also enhance one of the real assets, natural assets of our campus anyway, which is the beautiful landscaping and the architecture that has accumulated in that space over the last century. So that's happening, and we're pleased. Out at the athletic facility at Metzger Fields, we are now finishing up a new field house for the baseball and softball teams, so they'll be able to use the batting cage indoor at Morrell Field House all year long because it is a new field house that we're creating. That work is underway, or I should say it's completed now. It was underway this semester. And then finally, another capital project, more modest perhaps, but pretty momentous to those who are involved, is that the men's and women's basketball team get new locker rooms this year. They were sadly outdated, and I was told by many that this is a real problem for recruiting. You bring these guys and they show them this cruddy little locker room, and then they go over to Lehigh and see a really nice locker room. So we're very excited about that, and no doubt it will drive great success for our basketball program, or at least that's what they told me when we paid for it. But this is to say, I want to point out that all of these things we're doing, these investments that we're making, we're doing them in a context of constrained financial resources through actively and carefully managing our budget and stewarding those resources and making decisions based on priorities. Instead of just doing stuff we want to do, we're thinking very carefully about what do we need to do to advance our objectives. Not only did we accomplish all of these things in this difficult economy, the last 2 years have been the lowest increases in tuition in memory at the college. We don't have data going back much before the 1960s, but since that time, these are the lowest increases we've ever had. But we're doing it in a complicated way that focuses on very careful budgeting, cutting costs where we can, being much more hard-headed about decision-making, but we've done it, and I'm very pleased and proud that we have. We've improved our academic classes, our students are thriving, our facilities are improving, and we're spending less money to get it done, in part because of the support that we get from our donor community, which continues to be utterly remarkable. So before I conclude my remarks and open it up for discussion, I will have to say that notwithstanding all of this positive discussion about everything that's happening here, I think we are, the sector of higher education is facing the greatest challenges it has faced in many, many decades. And I think that those challenges come in a variety of forms. First of all, the economic model of funding higher education is, I think, severely troubled and not viable over the long term. And that model is do a lot of great things on our campuses. We're very proud of what we can do, so we find resources. We have donors support us, we have government funding support us, we have foundations help contribute, and we continue to raise tuition at rates well in excess of inflation because we believe we have a mission that makes it possible to do more. But in so doing, over the last several decades, we have genuinely placed college out of reach for many families in the middle class. Paradoxically, not so much the lower end, because we have a lot of financial aid for those folks, more and more. But for families in the middle class and even the upper middle class who want to send some kids to college, it's not easy to afford Lafayette or Princeton or Amherst or any other number of expensive elite colleges and universities. And that's a challenge. I think that the funding model that we have historically used, that I'm describing here, of ever-escalating costs and paying for them by ever-escalating tuition rates at higher levels, is not sustainable. That's one reason why we've taken the initiative to lower our tuition increases, including this year at a rate lower than the cost of living. We will work on that model to figure out how to do it in a way that we think is sustainable. That's a real challenge, but we must do it. We can't afford to keep doing this. I think if one wants to call it a bubble, one may. That pricing model doesn't hold up anymore. So I think that's a challenge we all have to face, and we're prepared to do it in the ways I described. Another related concern, and I think this is just as significant, although less analytically supportable, is what I would say is a significant shift in public confidence in higher education. You see it all the time in myriad ways. Articles in newspapers and magazines or various talking heads describing all of the excesses in higher ed and the amenities race, and we're in such a hurry to build jacuzzis for our students that we don't care what happens to the economic model. A lot of those statements are not based on a substantive understanding of the facts, but some of them are. And whether they're real or not is less important than the fact is the public perception and confidence in what we do is eroding. And if we don't have the confidence of people to send their children here and believe we'll use those resources well and productively, we begin to lose the game. So I think this is a serious issue that can be attended to, on the one hand, by taking seriously these criticisms. We all remember what GM did when small cars started getting made in the 1970s. They didn't need to worry about that. Bad idea. We need to hear what people are saying, and we need to respond to it. So we have to manage our costs differently. We have to control the increase in the cost of attending. We have to do a better job of telling our story about what the investment in a Lafayette education is really all about and what the returns are, both the pragmatic returns in terms of salaries to attend, or rather salaries in various career opportunities, but also the other kind of less obvious benefits. We haven't done the job in this area that we need to, although we've begun in the last 18 months to do so. But as a sector, not just Lafayette, we need to do a better job there to regain that trust, because we work in partnership with the public or we don't work at all. That's a concern. There are other slightly less dramatic issues that we're facing in higher ed that are very important. Technology is obviously one. There's not one sector of our economy that isn't being transformed by technology, and ours is in some ways especially vulnerable to technology because what we do first and foremost is something that's old-fashioned and aggressively inefficient. You're going to take a small class with a highly paid professor and 10 students. That's not scalable. That doesn't allow us, we can't do that more cheaply in any obvious way unless we rethink the way we do it. So technology is something that we have to understand better, how it impinges on our mission, how we can embrace it and use it effectively without having it replace what we do. We don't want to become an online college. That's not a value-added proposition. And we don't believe the market will require that. But technology is something we have to take seriously, and we are. Last year and a half, the board formed a new committee on information technology as part of what we manage, and we have recruited really outstanding trustees with high levels of experience in this area. We've hired new staff here at the college, and we've reorganized entirely so that we can be aggressive and thoughtful about it and make good decisions. So that's happening. There are a few other factors I won't go into in detail, but what I want to suggest is that it is a very exciting time to be involved in higher education because the challenges are profound. But we believe that we have a model for what we do that is sustainable even in these challenging times, and that what we do better than any other form of higher education in the United States or in the world. And that is change the lives of students one at a time in a small setting with careful, thoughtful, engaged faculty, using a curriculum that has been designed to help them learn what they need to learn, both to support traditional values of higher education, but also what's happening out their windows right now. We do a lot more than we used to with regard to thinking about the world and how they can engage productively in the world. The Oxley Center for Global Education is one of many examples. We are not, by any means, an ivory tower. So we have a model for how we do this that I think is really powerful because it is demonstrably better than how any other category of schools or universities provide education to students in the United States. And it has to do with, again, the scale of faculty-centered learning and focusing on individual students. It has to do with high-impact learning, certain things that we do that are especially valuable to students, individual research, study abroad programs, special projects and initiatives that allow students to work together collaboratively like they do in the tech clinic or Engineers Without Borders. There are myriad examples of those. We have all sorts of those kinds of initiatives that we think distinguish us. What it will take in the future for us to be successful, and I think we can be more successful in the future than in the past if we do this, is to focus very, very carefully on what those things are that make a difference, to make decisions around priorities and to hold people accountable for how investments and resources are being used, and then to tell that story aggressively so people understand. But the fact is, you all came back to this college because you believe you got something important and transformative in your lives, or I'm imagining you have. Or maybe you just came back to see old friends and you just dozed through college, but I doubt it. We believe that's enduring, that human beings, no matter how much changes around them, have a long-standing need for those kind of experiences, even more so in a world that's more and more technologically indifferent to interpersonal exchange. We will stand for a certain kind of education, and we can do it exceptionally well. So we have bright days ahead. We just today finished a retreat with the trustees to go over these strategic initiatives. There's enormous enthusiasm about what we're trying to accomplish. There's great support for it, and I think we'll have lots to say that's exciting in the years ahead. With that, I'm happy to stop talking and to answer questions or maybe have a drink. Thank you, sir. If there are subjects that you'd like to discuss that I didn't raise, or questions, or whatever, feel free to speak up. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, it's dark and I have glasses. Yes. I'm sorry. It's my fault.
You talked about the the number of students in the top 10% of their classes being quite high. So when I think about the college, one of the concerns has always been as it moves along this mission, does it become a college that starts to lack more and more diversity? So you've talked about the need to balance the economic diversity of the students, but what is the college doing not only for socioeconomic, cultural backgrounds, international, but also children with learning disabilities who are also very bright?
Terrific question. There's no doubt that, that some of the measures of academic quality that we rely on are not reliable predictors of a possible accomplishment in the future, or they are culturally or otherwise biased, like SAT scores. There's a pretty clear correlation to people and families of privilege and what it means for them. We have undertaken a very aggressive initiative as part of the strategic plan to increase the diversity of our community, and we have taken on a whole host of steps to do that. But briefly, the initiative really is focusing on doing several things at the same time. Change the number of faculty that are brought to our community, increase the number from underrepresented groups. That's very important because of this personal mentoring that goes on and the diversity of points of view that those faculty bring. And since I've been here, we've hired, I think, 57 new faculty, I think that's right, and 58%, 60% are women, 20% are faculty of color. And I'm proud of that. That's a very high number. We can do more, and we will continue. But if we hammer away at those percentages over time, we will begin to make a real dent in the percentage of faculty who represent the world. We've undertaken a series of significant initiatives to recruit students and support students who can come here. Two of them I'll mention briefly. The Posse program is one you may have heard about before. We sponsor Posse students from 2 cities every year. We have cohorts of about 20 students arrive on our campus each year who come from, most often they come from underrepresented groups because they come from urban environments where very often they're the first person to go to college. And we have Posse groups from Washington, D.C. and from New York. We've supported that program over the last 7 or 8 years, increasing the number about 5 years ago. And that helps us. These students are outstanding. They are campus leaders. They're exceptionally bright. They don't always have high SAT scores. More often than not, they don't, because that's not a world that they have been prepared for. But they're bright, and we assess them in ways that allow us to know that they're bright. The graduation rate of these students exceeds the student body as a whole. Among their numbers are students who have gotten Fulbright scholarships, who have won Pepper Prizes. They're making a difference. That's another way in which we're changing the student mix. Another initiative that came out of the strategic plan was to develop a new financial aid program, which we call the New Horizons program. And the idea was, on the one hand, to provide significant financial aid, need-based aid, to families with incomes below certain levels, and to make it comprehensible and simple so people know what we're talking about, as opposed to saying, yes, you can go to Lafayette if you fill out these 11 forms in triplicate and send them to us notarized in a self-addressed envelope. We'll tell you if you have aid. Most families don't know what to do with that kind of complexity. This program is much more straightforward. Families with incomes under $50,000 a year, which represents the national median income in America, will have all of the students' need met with grants, no loans. And any family that has income of $50,000 or less a year is almost certainly going to find that their need is full tuition scholarships and room and board because they won't be able to afford it. So they basically come with full support. That's an economic opportunity, but it plays out for underrepresented groups quite effectively. The other part of it is for families with incomes from $50,000 a year to $100,000 a year, we provide a limit on the amount of loans that we ask students to take on, $3,500 a year. So their maximum indebtedness when they graduate is $14,000 a year. I believe that if you read newspapers about these things, they talk about students graduating with $100,000 in debt. That will not happen here. So we have done a whole host of things. I'll mention one more, and that is we reorganized the senior administration of the college to create a vice presidency, the position that focuses on managing this issue, because I'm a great believer that stuff doesn't happen if somebody doesn't own it. It's really easy to talk about all the great things we're going to do, and then we get distracted. So we have a vice president for diversity and campus life. Celestino Limas is his name. He'll be arriving on campus in early July. He will oversee the entire student life part of our campus and our diversity initiatives. And the idea there is, again, to think about these issues all the time so that we can continue to move forward. We've also modified the curriculum. So there are many things we're doing that are making a difference, and our numbers are getting better each year, although modestly, and we need to do more. Long answer to your question, but it's an important one. Other questions? Yes?
Graduate schools favor Lafayette rather than just having students apply at random to various institutions? In other words, will any local universities or within the area or the Northeast favor Lafayette?
We don't have any explicit articulation agreements with graduate schools, although we have a relationship with the Simon School at the University of Rochester, the business school. That one is a formalized relationship. There are places that know our school especially well and look fondly on our applicants, and we have long-standing relationships there. But I think we have found over the last several years that our students are increasingly competitive in any number of areas, that they do well, and they compete head-to-head with other schools nationally. So we have students going all over depending upon what they're studying. We recently had a graduate, Ashley Javanette, who was a student government president who graduated this year, and she studies neuroscience, but is also interested in issues of public policy. And the best programs in the country are the University of Wisconsin, the University of California at Santa Barbara, and one or two others. And she got into all of them. So I think we do very well nationally. We had an article in the Alumni Magazine about all the students at Harvard Law School this year. We have a lot of them. So I think that it's really a national market for us.
I'd like to ask about students. My class was entirely men, and there's no, maybe 3 colleges left in the whole of the United States that only take men. And I'm reading in the newspapers how women are the majority of students, college students now. So, believe it or not, there's now concern whether men are getting the attention they should be when years ago it was the other way around.
Right.
Concerned that women weren't getting educated.
Right.
So what can you say about the role of men at Lafayette compared to other places?
Well,
And what's the percentage for that matter?
the percentage of men in our enrollment is slightly over 50%. So I believe we're about 52% male, 48% female, something like that. It's fairly close. Is that right? Does somebody know better than I? Thank you. I love it when I'm right. So it doesn't happen that often. And we have the advantage, because we're a highly selective school, we don't admit students, we create a class. We have many, many more students who are qualified to succeed here than we can admit. So what we do is we look at what kind of things we're looking for in our student body. Do we have sufficient numbers of theater people and musicians and athletes and various things? And therefore, we're able to find the right mix of male and female because we can do that. Schools that are less selective, and overall nationally, there are more women that are doing well in college and interested in college than men. But I don't think that that issue becomes a problem for us because of the nature of our institution. I will say, however, the women we admit here, and I'm sorry to tell you this, on the whole, do better academically than the men. And women are really smart. So men do fine too, but women have really also demonstrated that it was a good decision to go co-ed. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Report that the faculty had done okay, that the faculty had done on student life. Is that available for the public?
Well, I would think you're referring to a report on Greek life. That report is not yet available to the public, although a summary of it will be disclosed fairly quickly. About 2 weeks ago, it was presented to the Board of Trustees, and it's a very long, detailed report with a lot of confidential student-focused data. So we have to take, and we have every intention of disclosing the report, but we have to take distill it a little bit and take out some of the information that is confidential that can't be disclosed publicly. And we will, sometime over the course of the next few weeks, be putting it on the web. And as I said, it's really about Greek life more particularly. Yes, Riley.
In terms of the admissions picture of this incoming class, what does it look like in terms of the tri-state area, and how does it address what seems to be the intractable problem of the tri-state area and Lafayette's reputation, or lack of reputation, beyond the tri-state area? And what steps are we taking to address that reputation?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. And Joan, you may have some better numbers at your fingertips than I do. The number of students that we admitted from the tri-state area is decreased a little bit, and we have become a little bit more national and a little bit more international this year. We have undertaken a very specific initiative to be known more widely, both nationally and internationally. And there is a sort of a general challenge that small colleges face in certain regions of the country where these kinds of schools are not normally thought of as opportunities. The Southwest is an example, the West is an example, and parts of the South too. And we recognize that the demographic change that we're going to see over the next 10 years greatly favors growth in those areas. The mountain states will see 28% growth over the next 10 years, whereas the New England area, I think, decreases by about 10 or 11%. So we in fact spent time talking about that at this retreat. We have to make sure that we do a better job of making clear what the value proposition is for schools like Lafayette in those regions that don't normally think of schools like ours. And we're revamping our admissions office in significant ways, changing the way we reach out to the public, but also thinking about the curricular needs of those students. What kind of things do they need to know? What kinds of educational goals do they have? And can we accommodate them here? We will see over the next several years increased success in those areas, I'm sure, because of the investments we're making, just as we saw marginal increases now. But I think all of us who are in this business in schools in New England and the Mid-Atlantic area, which is a whole lot of very good small colleges, face that same demographic shift. There are other ways to think about this. By the year 2040, the country will be a majority non-white population. That's not an area we have historically excelled in. There will be 1 out of every 3 people in America will be Latinos by the middle of the century. We have to figure out a way to talk to all members of our community in this country and around the world and bring evidence of the value to them if we're going to be successful. And that's part of what we're doing.
I can just add to that, Dan, that we have reduced our dependence on the tri-state area. We're at about 60% now, when 5 years ago we were at 66%. We've changed the way we travel. We have targeted areas, some of what Dan was talking about. We've met with some Patriot League schools, and we're going to be traveling to California, Oregon, Washington, Atlanta, Florida, Atlanta is in Georgia, okay. So, some of the different areas, some of the, as we call them, emerging markets. So I think, I'm not really happy to hear it, but our travel is going to be increased from maybe 5 weeks to 6, 7, or 8 weeks a year. So we're trying to get that message out there. I think with our new website and our new Vice President of Communications, as Dan said, we've changed the way that we have messaged or changed the way that we have put out our message. And I think that, and as Dan knows, we work hard to get those students from the West Coast, and we work hard to keep them here when we do get them. So I think that we're making great strides in those directions. But one of the things, I guess if I could just defend my department a little bit, when you guys think about it, and you guys know Lafayette so well, there are so many competing goals, because you want us to raise our SATs until your granddaughter doesn't have the SATs we want, okay? Or until the 7-foot guy that can be a center for our team doesn't have the SATs we want. So we have legacies, we have the diversity issue, we have the academic issues, we have the geographic issues, the socioeconomic issues, and we take half our class early decision. By the time it's time for us to pick our class, we're looking at 300 students out of 4,000 or 5,000 applications, and it's a daunting task. So anyway, thanks for letting me have my say, Dan.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
You think I have a hard job. Are there any other questions? We have 2 or 3 more minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, you had your hand up, and then we'll go over there. Go ahead.
I would just like to, reinforce your missions director's comments about having more diversity. And in Dallas this year, we hosted, I think it was about 12 potential students that were to come to Lafayette. So in that regard, that was a first for me, because we've been there for 25 years. However, there's one other question that's a compliment. There's one other question I can give as a follow-on, which I expressed when you were in Dallas about a year and a half ago, and that is in regard to engineering. And engineering is divided into compartments: civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, metallurgical engineering. And yet, when we graduate as engineers, which I did, you end up going into business, and you end up becoming kind of maybe an engineer, maybe a businessman, maybe something else. Is there anything that is being done to kind of focus on a engineering degree type education where you don't have all these compartmentized issues that engineers go through?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I should have mentioned in my remarks that one of the things we did this year of consequence was a major external review of the engineering division. It was our thought that, on the one hand, we're very proud of engineering. We do great things in engineering, and it is one of the very few truly distinguishing aspects of this college that we have engineering woven into the fabric of a liberal arts college. That said, we haven't done an external review of the engineering division in several decades. And there were aspects of the program that we wanted to look at that we thought might be refreshed. One of them has to do with what is sometimes called a siloed approach to engineering, exactly what you're talking about. A student can come and get a BS in chemical engineering, and they get an outstanding education, but their curriculum is so rich and so deep, they don't have the opportunity to do other things. We do have an AB program in engineering studies, which allows students to work broadly. Some students have found that to be exceptionally helpful. Some other traditionalists have said, it's not rigorous enough for me. I want a BS, and I want to do a lot of math. And the fact is that the AB program does have a lot of the technical work, too. So this external review that we've done this year has given us, it was done by 3 very prominent leaders in engineering education around the country, and they spent several days here. And they made a series of recommendations that we embrace, and so too does the division. And it focuses on such topics as opening up the curriculum a little bit more so students have an opportunity to get that range of experiences that you're talking about, even if they don't decide to get an AB in engineering studies. That we want to engage our faculty in more interaction with each other. Even our engineering faculty tend to stay in their departments a bit much. We want to open up the curriculum in various ways. We want to invest in some truly distinctive initiatives. They acknowledge that we are extraordinarily good at providing bench training, lots of hands-on work with faculty, lots of emphasis on communication skills, which distinguishes us. We have engineers who are good at engineering who can communicate well. That's a huge asset. So we want to build on those strengths, but go the next level. And we're prepared to make significant investments in doing that. This is going to be a year of engineering for us because we are excited about this study and we're underway in doing it. There was a question here. Yes?
Yeah, I think it was a year or two ago you talked about the initiation of a campus-wide green activities. Put an update on that?
Sure. We signed what's called a campus climate commitment. A series of colleges and universities have signed this commitment as a way of demonstrating our desire to work towards the goals that are outlined in the campus climate commitment. And it's neutralizing our carbon footprint and doing all kinds of things that we can do to foster the community's commitment to sustainability. I will say 2 years ago, each year when you sign that agreement, they then evaluate your progress and you get a report card. Because the idea is you say you're going to do it, now what did you do? And we're going to evaluate that. And there are 6 measures of effectiveness they look at that comprise a collective score. 2 years ago, when we started this, we got a grade of D-, and which is to say we didn't get an F, but it was close, which tells you that our commitment to sustainability before that time was pretty non-existent. And I'm pleased to say that 2 years later, we have a grade of B something. I can't remember if it's a B+ or a B, but a significant improvement. And I'm proud of the fact that 2 areas of the 6 where we got an A were student-initiated work, which tells you that it was actually the students who got us going on this. And the second was the administrative relationship with students in getting this work done. We got an A. And that tells you that we're working in partnership. And we will continue to move forward. This year, we were one of a handful of schools of several hundred, maybe 300 or more, whose grade increased that rapidly. We were among the 5 or 6 most rapidly improving. So there are a whole host of things that we're doing related to how we buy energy, how we construct buildings, how we recycle, what we do about landscaping and wastewater, all kinds of things. And I'm proud to say we're making good progress.